Shalom, and welcome to a very special edition of One Day at a Time with Temple Israel in Memphis. Rabbi Jeremy and I have really been clinging to ritual since we've been at home these past 8 weeks.
And it's important to note that rituals can be done in a variety of ways and have a variety of different meanings. So today we wanted to share 2 takes on a ritual that we do in our home every single day. Okay, today's recipe is based off of one by world barista champion James Hoffman. I strongly recommend you check out his YouTube channel for both his version of this recipe as well as many other resources. To begin with, we are going to measure out 30 grams of whole bean coffee. We will be using 500 grams of water for this recipe, meaning a brew ratio of 16.6 to 1. Now that we have our 30 grams, we're going to put it in our grinder. I like to turn my grinder on before I put the beans in. That way the burrs are up to speed and you get a more consistent particle size. This is a Baratza Encore grinder set to 13. Now then, while those are grinding, we put in our paper filter. And what we're doing here is what's called pre-wetting, which means we are getting rid of some of the paper taste of the filter. And we're also getting our brewer, which is a Hario V60, up to temperature. We want it to be as hot as possible. Now you'll notice I am using boiling water, 212 degrees. A lot of folks, and I used to be one of them, think that you should be brewing coffee at a lower temperature, like around 200 degrees. However, again, thanks to Mr. James Hoffman and his advice, I tried cranking mine up a little while back and found I was getting much better results this way. Okay, we now have our ground coffee. We're going to put it in our brewer, zero out our scale again, and we are going to go ahead and flatten our grounds, and taking a small spoon, we're going to make a little hole in the center, and that's just so the water can get to all of the coffee. Go ahead and start our timer here, and we are doing what is called the bloom, which is the first phase of brewing. So we're going to put in about 60 grams of water. Make sure that those grounds are saturated, and a lot of people will use a spoon or something to stir with, but what I like to do is to go ahead and just shake the coffee, shake the brewer like this, and that way you are getting the coffee and the water to mix together nicely. You're going to do this for about up to 45 seconds. Okay, we are coming up on 45 seconds, so now we begin the actual brew. And our goal is to get to 500 grams of water total by 1 minute and 45. So just so if you want to try to even this out at home, we're looking to get to 180 grams by the 1 minute mark, and then to 300 grams by 1 minute 15, and between 1 minute 15 and 1 minute 45, we're going to take it up to 500. So I am pouring in the same direction here, and what you're trying to do is to get the water on all the parts of the coffee that you can inside the brewer, while at the same time try to stay away from the very edges. Water that gets right by the paper is just going to kind of go straight through the paper. It's not going to have a chance to interact with the coffee as much, and you won't get a full extraction. Now that we are at 500 grams, I'm going to go ahead and take my spoon from earlier, and I'm going to rub it against the edges of the brewer in both directions here, and that's just to try to scrape off some of the coffee grounds that are going to get stuck to the paper, to just get them again to interact with the water that's in the brewer. And now I'm just going to let it sit for a while. Once the level in the brewer gets down low enough, you're going to want to go ahead and swirl it. I like to swirl it in both directions. And the goal here, again, is to get some of that coffee off of the walls of the paper filter, and also try to get an even of a bed as possible of the grounds at the bottom. That way the water is going to go through evenly and get an equal extraction, and you're not going to get any low spots where the water is more likely to go through. Now we are aiming for a total brew time of somewhere between 3.5 and 4 minutes. We are just under 4 right now, so I'm going to take out my filter, put it in a cup to let it cool down before I throw it in the trash can. And now what I like to do is to go ahead, use my coffee spoon one last time and stir the vessel with the coffee. And I do this because I believe that coffee comes out in different strengths as it's coming out of the brewer. It's going to taste different the first bit of coffee that comes out than the last. And I'm not totally sure if that dripping of coffee as it goes through into the vessel is enough to really mix it. So I like to do that as a final step, knowing then that both cups of coffee that this produces will taste about the same.
Okay, first things first, we got to measure our beans. So I just do this, as you can see. Take the beans, I use 40 grams of beans. That's because that was the original recipe Rabbi Jeremy taught me, and I refuse to learn a new one because it's too much math. So you want to measure it out, make sure you get it right. Sometimes it takes a little extra time, a little extra love. Good enough. So close. We'll grind our beans. We'll realize we forgot to start the grinder first, as Rabbi Jeremy always instructs. And we'll wait. We also switch out to the brewer, as I believe what it's called, to use this one, because apparently it matters greatly what recipe you use. Rabbi Jeremy calls this part pre-wetting. I call it wetting. As long as it's wet, you've done it right. It also helps sometimes if it doesn't quite drain all the way and you're running out of time because you're wrestling a baby, to just go ahead and pour that extra water out back into the, I don't even know what it's called. All right, let's warm up those coffee cups because again, that's what I've been told I have to do in order to make coffee in this house. We're gonna put our ground beans right there, tap it on out, make sure to get all the little shavings. You'll notice my technique here uses the wrist to flatten it out. We even it back down to 0, we begin to pour. Now there's something called a bloom, I've been told. I just pour some water until I think it looks good and bubbly, and then we wait. Once I've decided I can't wait any longer, I then will pour more water. So here you'll see my technique of just pouring water in any which direction. We're pouring again. Right now I'm getting a little creative, a little too close to the paper, Rabbi Jeremy would say, but now I am writing my name in the water. If you can see, that was the E, there's an S and another S. That's just a fun pour to make it have a little extra flair. You'll notice the temperature, it's 212 degrees. That's because that's what Rabbi Jeremy has the kettle set on, and I just push on. You'll also notice I'm not using a timer. That's because I don't know how to use the timer, and also I don't care. You'll notice that I added a spoon. That is because I don't know why we have these little spoons right next to the coffee making station. Now you may be wondering, what size grounds do I use? I use whatever the grinder is set to. I don't know if you've heard of the Keurig, but it goes much faster than this process. If you're looking for a quick cup, this is not your method. This is probably my favorite part of watching the last bit of water drain from the brewer because it means I get to drink coffee. Look at that, liquid gold. L'chaim.
We hope that you've enjoyed learning about the ritual that we do in our home every single day. And remember, no matter what,
it tastes the same. This has been a special edition of One Day at a Time.